Hey, welcome back to another episode of Addicted to Gear. My name is Tony. What I'm holding here in my hands is not part of a terrible accident, although it might look like it at first. It's actually the Donner Strat that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago now. And as I mentioned in my video, I said that this guitar was going to become a project, and so that project has started. And basically what I'm doing right now is I'm videotaping for you guys the process that I'm taking to upgrade this guitar and turn it into something a step above what it actually was right out of the box. Now, I'm not putting down the Donner products for the price that you're paying. I think you have a good starter guitar, but with a couple of tweaks, you can really make this guitar shine. So in this video, which is series 1 or the first video in the series, I'm gonna take you with me and I'm gonna show you what I do step by step when I do one of these projects. And some of the clips will be boring, some of them will not. It depends on what kind of guitar addict you are. If you're into the minutia and you really want to see the nitty-gritty and you want to see me getting my hands dirty, well, I'm going to show you step by step what I have to do to these guitars to get them to where I think they're going to be an even bigger value than what you can get right off the shelf. So video number 1 is going to show you basically how I take this guitar apart, the teardown of the guitar, before we actually start working on the neck and start leveling the neck and doing a fret level, a recrown, and a polish. And then the follow-up videos in this series will be the electronic works, where I'm going to be swapping out the 2 single coil pickups and installing something new there. And after that, we might be looking at a headstock reshape. I'm not really sure about that. I'm playing with that idea, maybe changing the way the profile is on the headstock. Not that it makes a difference on the sound, but it does make an aesthetic difference, which is something that I'm playing around with. I'm not sure. I haven't really decided yet. We will also be putting in a brand new nut. You can see there's a nut missing here right now, and we're going to be upgrading the tuners, the stock tuners on the guitar, so that we can get them to hold tune a little bit better. And I think that's going to be a worthwhile upgrade. So have a look at step number 1, phase number 1 in this project. Here you can see the red Donner Strat that I picked up and reviewed for you guys not too long ago. This was one of the Strats that I purchased for my son and also to use as a project. I wanted to basically see what kind of quality I can get for like a sub $200 Strat, and it's actually not that bad. So I figured I'd work on the guitar, do a couple of upgrades to it, see how far I want to take it. But really the idea is to make the guitar a little bit better than it is now, a step or 2 above what it comes like stock, so that my son could actually use it to play. Overall, it's quite a nice guitar, a little bit on the heavy side, as I mentioned in my full review that you can check out on my channel, but other than that, solid body. The neck is pretty nice, and that's the most important thing. You want to make sure the neck is playable and is not all wonky in terms of the fret relief and the levelness of the fret, but we're going to check all that anyways. But I can tell you just by playing with it, it's pretty good so far. The bridge is not the best, but it's it's adequate for what we want to do today. We want to keep this guitar, the cost of this upgrade, to a minimum. So I'm going to be using a lot of parts that I already have, that I've recycled from other guitar builds and other guitars that I've had in the past that I've upgraded. So one of the things that I want to change are the neck and the middle pickup on this guitar. The humbucker in the bridge position is not bad. It's a ceramic pickup, but it has a lot of bite to it, which I think is okay. But the 2 single coil pickups leave a lot to be desired. So I'm going to take a set of Strat pickups that I had, and I'll volunteer those pickups into this build so that we can upgrade that. Things like the switch is a little bit rigid, not the best. It's a little bit, You can tell that it's not the high quality switch that we'd like to have, but for this particular case we'll keep the switch until it breaks, and then we'll use something else in its place. But for right now, I think the main things I want to upgrade are the pickups. I want to just make sure the frets are all level, and if there's any high frets, we'll level those out. So far by playing it, the frets seem to be pretty good. The nut, on the other hand, way up here, is a really cheapy plastic nut, so that will be replaced with another nut that I have. One of these, I have a few of them. We'll see which ones would fit the bill, but a nut upgrade would definitely do the trick, I think. And also the tuners. The tuners on this guitar don't hold very well. You can see that there's play in them. So I'm gonna take a set of tuners that I got from a Strat build that I upgraded a while ago, and I'll use those. Now unfortunately these tuners have the pins in them, so the two little pins instead of having a screw, so these are not going to be a direct fit. I'll have to drill some new screws and probably fill in the ones that are already on the guitar, but we'll try and do the best we can. And I was also playing with the idea of possibly reshaping the headstock, maybe getting rid of the Donner logo here. We'll see how crazy we want to get. I also have a standard retro parts bone nut here with a flat bottom, and if worse comes to worse, and you know the nut that's already in here is flat, I might have to cut a new nut. We'll see. But basically this is a project that I want to do in my spare time, and I figured even though it's not the best video setup in terms of getting good lighting and all of that, I figured I'd take you guys along with me in case you'd like to see what it's all about. Let's start off by taking off the strings. These strings that come stock with it are not that great anyway, so I don't mind getting rid of those. I'm just going to loosen everything up here. Now if my son would see me doing this to his guitar, he'd probably freak out, so it's best that he's not around when I do this, because he'd probably think I'm wrecking everything right now. But I've done this quite a few times. I'm pretty comfortable with doing upgrades and whatnot, so I feel like this wouldn't be too difficult for us to do. So for any of you guys that have done this before, you probably know how all this stuff works anyways, but if you're like me, you like watching these kind of videos in the hopes that you might pick up a couple of tips here and there. Alright, so now that we have the strings off, what I can do is check to see if everything is level. So the first thing I do is I take my trusty fret rocker here and I just check the frets just to see whether or not there's any kind of rock that need to be adjusted. There's a little bit of rock here, and what I do is I normally just mark wherever I see that, because if it's only a couple of little spots, instead of doing the entire neck, I'll just do wherever the frets are a little bit high. But if I see that the frets are high all over the place, then I'll just bite the bullet and do the whole neck. For those of you who don't know how this tool works, basically all it is it's a straight edge that you rock across 3 frets, and if the frets are flat, there shouldn't be any rocking back and forth movement. Now if the frets are not flat, you will get rocking, and so the idea is to have a perfectly flat fretboard so that you can have your action really low, and you won't have any kind of buzzing or issues with the fretboard and the strings. Now I can already tell you there's quite a few spots that are not completely flat, So it might require a little leveling, but it's not like a major thing. A light leveling would probably do the job, but it still requires a lot of time. You have different lengths here, so you can actually fit them in. So when they're on the lower frets here, you can get them even in the smaller spaced out frets. You can see that I've marked up some spaces here where the frets are high. So I think I'm probably gonna do a fret level on this thing. I'm gonna see if this nut comes off easily. I usually use a little hammer, but of course I don't have it here. So what I'll do is I'll make the best of it and use whatever I have available here, which is not much, but sometimes what happens is they glue in these plastic nuts with super glue. All right, this is coming off. There we go. So you can probably make out here that the nut is not the best. It has a little bit of a curve to it, but I'm going to put it aside. We're going to leave it there. Sometimes you don't have to take them all completely off. You can just loosen them up a little bit until they're no longer within the neck. You can just leave it there. You know, you don't want to twist the neck this way, because then you can crack the delicate edges of the guitar. There's a shim in here, so I'm gonna hold on to the shim. I'll put the body aside for a minute here, and I'll get the neck ready for the work that we need to do with it. All right, so we'll start off on this side, and I'll basically just take off these screws, take off the tuners here. So to take off these nuts, you need a 10mm nut driver, and I keep everything because eventually I'll probably reuse it, and if something goes wrong along the way, I know I can always bring it back to the way it was. And sometimes these parts come in handy for other projects, just like this one. Alright, so when we're doing this, you just have to take off the little nuts that are in there, get rid of the little washers, and then we'll use a little screwdriver to take these guys off. And these are a little tricky sometimes, because what ends up happening is they strip out pretty easy, especially if you don't have the proper screwdriver. If you don't have one, get one, because it really beats searching for tools. You know, you never have the proper bit when you need it. This one has a whole bunch, and they just slide in and out. So these are the best. Comes in handy. All right, so I'm happy to say that the holes in this guitar neck have actually been cut properly. Sometimes you have rough holes with a bunch of chip out. In this case, at least the holes are drilled out nicely. These small holes that are left over, we'll probably fill them in with some wood filler or wood dust with some glue. We'll see what I have at hand, and we'll work on that. It's not a big deal, but I was hoping the other tuners, the new tuners, would actually cover the hole, but they don't. I'll probably even take off these guys here, because if I'm gonna sand this down and maybe recontour, I'm thinking about maybe changing this to the contour similar to what I have on my Sir. I like that profile better than this kind of duckbill profile that they give these guitars. So I might as well take these off too while we're here, and keep the parts. Like I always say, I put the parts in containers. Sometimes I use these plastic pill bottles so I don't lose them and have to go looking for them later on. I keep them. They make great containers for parts, and might as well do that right now before I lose them. Put that in there, put that in there, and the rest of the parts will, bigger parts we'll just put in a bag. You don't know how many times I've dropped little screws and then had to like search high and low to find it so I can finish a build. So the thing you want to also keep in mind with these screws that they give you is that so a lot of times these screws are not very good. They're made out of a cheap alloy, and what ends up happening is that the screw heads can easily snap off, and then they get broken and they stick in the hole, and then you have to drill out the hole, and it's a big mess. So if you can replace them with something better when you have the opportunity to do so, I would recommend doing that. So there you go, guys. That was series 1 in the Donner Strat guitar teardown. We didn't really get into too much crazy stuff. It's just basically taking the guitar apart and getting it ready for the next step, which is going to be the work that we're going to be putting into the neck so that we can get every fret leveled, polished, recrowned, and nice and shiny so that it will feel great in the fingers. Of course, the quality on my bench videos is not that great. Unfortunately, I'm not set up in that space to take really good quality videos, so you have to bear with me. But if you like this kind of nitty-gritty detail and you like to spend some time watching other people doing the work, you can definitely pick up a couple of tips from these videos. So the next step is basically the neck. So there's going to be a lot of sanding in that video. I'm warning you now, but if you like that kind of thing, then definitely tune in for that. If you like the content that I'm putting out on my channel, please don't hesitate to subscribe, because there's going to be more great videos coming your way. Not just guitar teardown and rebuild projects, but a lot of great videos on gear, guitars, pedals, effects, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned for that, because we'll be coming back with other great content. See you soon, guys.